Hi everyone, and welcome to this roughly 30-minute session we're going to do, which is going to be a bit of a mixture between well, it's mostly demo, but it's also really a conversation around the whole subject of increasing revenue and efficiencies using the territory manager. And I have Liam Costello with us, who is our resident mapping expert. Liam, how are you?
Hey Ronan, hi everybody.
So, Liam, if you wouldn't mind, let's just show an outline, just a brief overview of the kind of things we are going to talk about. So we will talk about, for some of you who already know this stuff, you can jump ahead, but we will talk a little bit about territory management, what it is, and obviously the using the territory mapping software, why people would use that. Then we're going to jump in directly into the product. We're going to show you the process of designing territories, but we will start that conversation out by explaining the three different types of territory. You get a geographic, you have an accounts-based, or some people call them points-based, and the most popular really is the hybrid, the people using both. Liam is then going to show you how to optimize territories, and we're going to link that really to a discussion around analyzing sales performance. And then obviously a very important part of all this process is the ability to collaborate with others and scenario planning. So we'll also, Liam, I should say, is going to highlight some of those scenario planning tools, the ways that you can actually use the tool to share with others. And because we are going to touch on the subject of disruption, which we know is a key issue for people in terms of managing the transition of accounts and how to minimize the effect that that can have on customers and salespeople. Well, okay, just before we jump in to the product itself, Liam, the process of territory management and how people use, well, I guess we know from the Sales Management Association and that, you know, up to 70% of people are still using Excel sheets. So probably everybody's managing territories in some way. But, you know, why would people even consider transitioning from something like an Excel sheet into using a specific tool like a territory mapping software tool?
Thanks, Ronan. Well, we call it internally the intelligence of where. Um, so I suppose we believe that if you have information or data that has some sort of address field, it deserves to be shown on a map. I suppose visualizing your data spatially on a map it give you much better insight and trends and to understand trends than simply just looking at a spreadsheet or looking in a CRM or a database. So just I suppose the intelligence of where enables you to view your customers, prospects, offices, distribution locations on a map so you can make better decisions. And yeah, one of I suppose the horror stories that we hear is that in terms of territory management and managing territories, a lot of customers still would like to do it or still perform it manually by using spreadsheets, or just the old school method of getting an old paper map and then using a marker and creating lines manually. And you know, for a lot of customers with that only, or for a lot of people that would only have a handful of reps, that probably works fine. But once you increase your rep volume, you definitely would need some more comprehensive um mapping or territory mapping solution to help with that. And one, because it'll save time, and two, you'll create more optimum territories or better territories.
Yeah, we don't want to come across as spreadsheet bashers. We all love our spreadsheets, but I think the reality is that when you exclude geography from particularly decisions around field-based salespeople, when you don't factor in the geographic component, the drive time component, then it often leads to imbalances. It may look perfect on a spreadsheet because you might have an even number of accounts and an even level of revenue, but what you don't have is even drive time, and that can really skew things.
I'll start with the geographic based approach. That would be, you know, the kind of traditional method. A lot of people would kind of resonate with it. it's pretty much of assigning a geographic area to a rep or to a region. So in this scenario here, I have 10 territories along the southern part of the US. It's built by zip code. And we can see each area of operation or each rep's territory color coded and labeled. So yeah, we have the geographic based approach. I'll run through and show you the point based or account based approach and maybe why some customers would prefer this approach. So it kind of differs in terms of how you're viewing it. In this scenario here, we're looking at customers as circular pinpoints, and they are color coded based off which rep is assigned to them. So
you're basically ignoring geography here, Liam.
In a way, to kind of give you a good example of why some customers will prefer this is if you have a high volume of customers or reps operating in the same area on the ground, a point-based approach becomes a little bit better because it's more flexible to manage. So for example, let's say, Ronan, we work in a medical device company. You could be selling one of the you're a rep and I'm a rep. You could be selling one of the products to the dermatology department, and I could be selling a separate product to the oncology department. So basically, the hospital's in the same zip code, but you have multiple accounts and you have multiple reps operating in that area. So you can't really split. It's not easy to split a zip code on a geographic based alignment.
You need something more granular than a zip. Is it fair to say, Liam, as well, that often larger sales teams too, they might split their teams by maybe a vertical, so they focus on a certain vertical and they almost ignore the geographic element because they have accounts basically all over the US, for example, or that they might have specific teams based on their skill set or their knowledge, or particular reps who have a particular expertise, a subject matter expert, and they would use this approach for those skills as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. It kind of dovetails into the hybrid approach, which I'll run through in a minute. But yeah, you're 100% correct. If I might even, it kind of makes a little bit more sense. It's just to run into the hybrid approach right away. But you mentioned it as well, skill set, and it's kind of got me thinking there that key accounts as well could be another option. So this is a hybrid model where it's a mix of both a geographic based territory and a point based alignment. So, or a point based territory. So it gives you the best of both worlds.
Okay, so I'm looking at, and you're going to have to bear with me, Liam, because you're the expert in this area. But I'm looking at territory 3. I can see yellow dots, and what that's saying is that those yellow dots are owned by the person who runs territory 8.
Pretty much, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we call them account exceptions. So let's say, for example, the rep in territory 8, along with running that geography, maybe he or she is a key account manager and looks after accounts in neighboring regions as well, because it could be high profile accounts, or there could have been a relationship built up over time with them accounts. So you want to maintain that ownership with the rep associated to the territory 8 geography.
Okay.
You kind of see another example here. Let's say in territory 5 and territory 1, where some of the accounts are assigned to territory 1.
Yeah, okay. And this is probably the most common approach, particularly for larger teams, that they would use both geographic and account-based or point-based, which we're calling hybrid. I mean, but basically it's the combo, isn't it? It's the combination of both.
Yeah, best of both worlds. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we've gone through that. So I guess I can see, so obviously the power, this is what we talked about earlier. So the visualization, it's instant. You can see your territories, you can see where your accounts are. But maybe what you can't see is whether they're efficient or not. So how would I go about kind of assessing my territories to at least then kind of get an understanding of where I might want to make tweaks or where I might want to improve territory design?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where the end users can aggregate or get a balance of how each territory is performing. Some of the key metrics that we would see all the time is sales potential. They may want to see the volume of accounts per territory, revenue year to date, or historical revenue, or any other number of orders. Various KPIs and metrics that are important for them. So that's what we can do. We can aggregate all of that per territory, so we can turn on a balance. I'm just going to create a balance based off count. That's just summing up the volume of customers I have in each territory, and then maybe a sales potential metric that I have as well. I'll go in a moment.
Okay.
We might go.
Just it's a small point, Liam, but it doesn't have to be potential. It could be historic sales. It could be anything. Because there may be people who don't have that number. I mean, we think it's the ideal is to have that number. Sales potential is a better way to go about maybe optimizing or balancing, but it's not always possible to calculate. It can get a little bit complex. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm looking here, so I can see those two metrics here. So what's this telling me?
So we can see in the count field that territory 1, there's 52 customers associated to the rep in territory 1. And then the sum of potential sales, or maybe in the case you mentioned, historical sales, let's say last year's sales is 544K.
Okay.
So you can see the breakdown of these two metrics in the legend. And then we can also view it in a chart view. So we can see how each territory is performing. You'll see an orange line going across the graph.
Yeah.
That's showing the average. So you can see, I suppose, which territories are exceeding that average and which are below.
So that top line, Liam, that's number of accounts, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so territory 2, again, and territory 7, you can clearly see there's a big imbalance. Territory 2 looks like it has a very few accounts, and territory 7, a lot of accounts. Now, you and I both know that there can be reasons for that, but this to me looks like that there are obvious areas too where you might want to make some tweaks. And
yeah, we can see right here that some realignments probably would have to take place, and
okay,
and territory 7, we could see that maybe that rep could be hitting his or her number in terms of quota, but we're also look on the other side that potentially we're leaving sales on the table because that rep, the workload or the capacity of that rep is too high. So if that rep can't visit enough prospects or customers, well, then they're just going to get swept up by your competitor. So this is just a really nice graph to understand where realignments or where tweaks could change or could potentially where you can make them.
It's probably not unrepresentative, Liam, of what we see on a day-to-day basis. I mean, we often talk about this idea that the territory rewards the person or the salesperson. And what we mean by that is, well, I remember this. I mean, sometimes I used to look at people getting awarded salesperson of the year, and you really knew that the reason was they looked out. They got a great territory, or they got a great set of customers, and it was almost impossible to fail. And yet there were others who probably deserved that award, but they just didn't have that fairness, I guess, for want of a better word, the sales potential to actually hit the numbers that they were expected.
Yeah, so it's kind of why we would recommend, it's a good thing to optimize or review anyway workload, because it's really a capacity measure. So create equal territories based off workload and then set quotas from that. So what I mean is you and I, we could tweak our territory so that we both have 100 accounts, but my travel time, my workload could be 5 hours more extra a week because the geographic spread of my customers are in more rural areas, so I'm traveling more, and where yours could be all concentrated closer in a city. So that's why workload is a really powerful indicator of how each territory is performing. And it's probably it's what we see a lot is that customers would want to at least balance, but if not fully optimize based off workload. Well, so I'll go through the workload index now then. Basically it's an algorithm that we've created, and the tool it is created to help maximize the workload capacity of a rep. So it requires two inputs from yourself. One would be frequency and the other being duration. And then the element working in the background is the travel time.
Okay. And what if you've customers, Liam, with so you've a data set with a few thousand customers and they all have different call frequencies and duration. Well, maybe not all, but they're maybe categorized. How do I display that?
Yeah, so I suppose we can build in that logic. We would, if you have a field in your spreadsheet showing the frequency number,
Gotcha.
well then we can just select that from the drop down,
Okay.
similar
Okay.
to a duration.
Okay.
That if let's say your gold standard customers you spend 60 minutes with them and your bronze standard customers might only be 15 minutes, that type of scenario. So
Gotcha.
we
Okay.
the view that you're seeing here, this is just the default view that I'm using just to keep it simple, saying one visit per month and 30
Yeah.
minutes with
Cool.
that customer, but we can definitely get a bit more sophisticated based off different frequency visit rates.
And then the system does the travel, calculates the travel for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So if I complete this and go back to the map view, well then I think that on the next part of the agenda was to maybe run an optimization.
Yeah, I think I think people would like to see that. And I guess why do people do this? I mean, it's the kind of thing that to do manually is just a nightmare. And these are the kind of terms we hear day in, day out. It's just a nightmare to do. But what are the downsides? Or, obviously, you and I are biased. We think optimization is amazing, and it is amazing to a certain extent. But I think we would both agree that what it does is it probably takes about 95 to 98% of the heavy lifting away, but you still need to factor in other things.
Yeah, it's very logical based. It definitely excludes, I suppose, the emotional or human impact. So yeah, it's great. It's something we would always recommend. As you said, it will get you 95, 98% of the way there, but you'll always probably have to go back and do some tweaks, do some of the account exceptions that we mentioned, move some zip codes around if necessary. But overall, it is a faster and more efficient way to do a territory realignment. So the manual approach will be just to go in and drag zip codes and accounts around, but the automatic optimization approach allows you to select how many territories you want to optimize on. So I have 10 existing territories, so let's keep that as but if you're growing, you can put the number up to 12 or 13, whatever you want. So the metric that you want to optimize on, you can select. I think we've gathered that our workload index will be a really good one to
Okay.
optimize on.
Yeah.
Use the road network, sure, and then we can press complete. So eSpatial will do all the heavy lifting for you, and we'll optimize these 10 territories. So we can see, I suppose, the additions and the subtractions that have occurred as a result of running the optimization. But maybe we want to do some scenario planning or do some what if analysis to maybe look at the before and after. And a great way to do that will be to use our comparison tool. So what will happen here is that we'll open up two viewports. The left-hand viewport will be what the territory alignment looked like initially, and the right-hand side is what the alignment looks like now after the optimization has run its course.
Okay. So what I'm seeing visually is I'm seeing, for example, territory 6 is now bigger. So that's on the left-hand side is what it was originally like, and on the right is what it is now like. And these numbers give me an indication of what's changed, is it?
Yep. So it's a nice tabular output showing you the before and after.
Okay.
We can also get a loss gain report based off workload. So you can see the light blue bar was the workload prior, and the dark blue bar is what it is now.
And so this is cool, but how do I see the list of accounts that have actually moved? Because obviously one of the things I'm thinking about here is we talked about this at the beginning is disruption. So knowing what accounts have moved to what territories, what people are inheriting accounts and what people are maybe losing them.
So here's the table view. And if you toggle to whatever view you're looking to. So in this case, we just want to view the show changes only. So these are the accounts that would have moved ownership. So
I
you'll be
got
able
you.
to, you can see the initial load value and what territory they're assigned to now. And again, you
Cool.
can export this list, or if you wanted to export out the entire account list, then the new definition, let's say, you can export it from here. Similar to exporting the underlying zip codes that cover each region, we can export them out as well.
Okay. Okay. So in my head, I'm thinking the process of optimization, what it does is it results then, obviously it's really super fast, right? Which, you know, and we know that people take sometimes weeks to do this, but the process is super fast. But what you're really trying to do is you're trying to use the algorithm to help you smooth out these imbalances. So you have territories that are out of kilter, maybe with too much of a workload versus ones that don't have enough workload. And you're creating more compact territories that actually introduce more fairness too, probably because they're more balanced in terms of the metrics you've chosen, which is count and revenue, for example.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, happier customers, happier reps, more revenue.
Well, I guess, yeah, I suppose to ensure you have the happy reps, I guess we would highly encourage people to involve the managers using the scenario planning tool, because that's a great way for them to see potential changes and then have their own input. And it might be a good idea just to just show people how easy it is to share a map, because I think in these kind of scenarios, that's where the planning tool really excels, isn't it?
Yeah, so let's say if you're happy with how this alignment looks or proposed alignment, you can share it to relevant key stakeholders. So you can share it to a specific user or a team of users,
Gotcha.
and then you can set the permission if you wanted them users to make any changes. So you can have a live map between everyone. So at least everyone would have a view of what it would look like before putting it into production. It gives you similar to using the comparison tool. It kind of gives you that intelligence-backed decision making. So before anything goes live, you can see, okay, this will work, or no, we need to change this. So at least you're not doing anything based off gut feeling.
Yeah, okay. And yeah, you're and it's and again we would generally recommend, and a lot of customers do this anyway, is that you would start at the lower level, which is your territories, and try and balance those on a sales potential or a workload. And then you have, you know, maybe you've 100 territories. Now you've got 100 territories that are reasonably balanced and fair in terms of, and then you could start assigning those territories to maybe your districts, and then from your districts to your regions. I mean, you can go up to 6 hierarchies in the tool, Liam, but you can then create a much more balanced hierarchy with that kind of approach. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and obviously, as you touched on, um, the ability to involve the managers in very emotive subjects around which accounts move can really eliminate a lot of that hassle and disruption.
Yeah. Yeah. And they can then you can go back into the tool, make your tweaks, kind of similar to the use cases that we mentioned before, where there could be key accounts or there could be accounts that would have been in a worked with neighboring reps for such a long time that you want to kind of maintain that relationship.
Yeah.
So you can always go back and make sure everything looks good before putting it out live.
Okay, so one more question, Liam. You're not off the hook yet.
Right.
I so now I have my perfect alignments, and as a rule of thumb, we know that most people would do their territory design jobs on an annual basis, but we certainly work with a lot of companies who do a lot of what you might call active sales territory management. So let me let me pose a scenario. I have the salesperson in territory 9 has left, and temporarily I want to reassign the accounts to I think we can pick an area here. If you zoom in there, is that arc? Yeah, so I just want to temporarily reassign some of those accounts, the most important accounts in that territory, maybe to somebody in territory 3. And then the second thing I'd like the system to do is to suggest the best location for me to start hiring a new sales rep for Territory 9.
Yeah, so let's say if we're happy with how the geography looks, but we wanted to temporarily reassign some of the accounts to a neighboring rep, we can do it quite easily. So you can just manually select the accounts on the map that you wanted to reassign, and then you can select, I think it was Territory 3 you said.
Yeah, okay.
So we can see the
Oh
accounts have
yeah,
now
okay.
changed ownership. We can also do it from the table view, that you can go into the table view, go into Territory 3, I believe it was. Territory
Territory
9.
9, yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you can go into Territory 9 in the table view and reassign the accounts that way as well. So there's a lot of kind of different views or different ways that you can realign or change the ownerships temporarily. Then going into your scenario of finding, where's the best place to recruit a new hire from, we can use territory center points.
Okay.
And we basically we would recommend a weighted center point because they can be used as guides or advise you on the best location to recruit a rep from, and workload is the best
You've
approach.
can I just ask you though, you've got two options. So what's the difference between a geographic territory center and a weighted one?
So a geographic would just plot the center in the centroid of the territory,
Okay.
or a weighted one would kind of, it's like think of gravity. It will gravitate the center point based off whatever metric we want here. So in this
Okay.
case, we can select workload or work index. So if I press complete here, it'll generate center points for all regions, but we can then focus on it on a specific territory then. So if I go to style, so just that we can see it a bit easier. There it is. So
Okay.
eSpatial is recommending that it would be kind of towards the northern half. And it makes more sense because that's where the majority of the accounts are and the majority of that's where the majority of the workload is.
Yeah. And I suppose in a real world, they're great guides. It isn't always possible to get someone in the perfect location because the best person may not be located there, but this is a great guide to help with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, great. Okay. So you'd be pleased to hear I don't really have any more questions. I think we covered all the main, but would you mind just showing that slide again? We'll just run through just to check that we have covered everything. So yeah, so okay, we started out with an overview of the territory management process. We are biased, but we genuinely believe that when you move from a spreadsheet to a territory mapping software, it's a game changer. It just, in every way, in terms of time saved, accuracy of decision making, the speed of decision making, and just the sheer value of being able to visualize and see your territories. Then Liam, you did a great job of just showing us. I mean, most people use what they call a hybrid, but there are kind of three different types of ways to do territory: the geography based, the points based, and then the mixture, the combination. And yeah, we covered the territory optimization process. And we did talk a little bit about how obviously the output of that results in more compact territories with a more even workload. And there's so many benefits to that, not just revenue, but particularly around productivity and efficiency. And we topped it off there with the scenario planning tool and then the manual adjustments. I don't know if we've missed anything, Liam, but I really appreciate it. I think we will be running a series of videos like this, and we would be very open to suggestions. Are there any topics that you would like us to cover? And thank you all for watching.
Thanks, everybody.